I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it, didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.
Well, welcome back, Mr. Dennett. Been planning on this for a very long time, and I'm glad to see your face again on the previously known as Bobby Dizzle podcast. First time on the Caffeinated Cryptid. How you doing?
Doing good. Doing pretty good. How are you?
We're doing good for the usual pre-show computer problems. We're right on time. So you've been really busy since we last chatted back in like 2022, I think it was.
Oh wow,
And,
been that long?
Yeah, because remember we pre-recorded, so it was like our show, and then like 4 months went by, so it's been 2 years close to it.
Wow,
it goes by quick, especially with time loss and the abductions. You don't know. We thought it was 4 hours. But you've been on Ancient Aliens. I just watched your episode last night just to refresh my memory with the famous J-Rod incident. And I was like, I went to college with a guy named J-Rod. I'm like, I knew it. I knew there's something off about that guy. So I wanted to get kind of nerdy with the Ancient Aliens thing. What was the production with those guys like? I know Rich Hoffman personally. He lives here close to where I do. And so I get his updates. I want to hear your updates of what it's like working with things like the History Channel, and what are they trying to get you to say? If there's any kind of not coercion, but like a narrative they're trying to skew, perhaps.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that. I can say that every TV show I've been on,
yeah,
does that pretty much without exception. I mean, there was one TV show that actually handed me my script. Wait a second. Here's your questions and here's your answers. I'm like, you got it. What? I will say that Ancient Aliens did treat me really well. They flew me up to Rochester, New York. Put me up in a nice hotel for 3 days, paid me my gas money, a little per diem, enough to make it worth it.
Yeah.
And yeah, they gave me a, not a script so much as like a itinerary, I guess, bullet points of about 20 different things. I'm like, this is a lot, and I'm pretty good at this subject, but there was a lot of subjects they wanted to cover.
Yeah, they're pretty extensive, seems like.
Yeah, and so I did my homework. Of course, some of it I did know, some of it I didn't. But I studied as best as I could, and they filmed at this really nice location, this sort of mansion. I guess.
I was going to say, I've seen the inside of your house. I'm like, I don't think that's his house.
No, it wasn't.
It looked pretty nice. Yeah, that particular concept will always lure me in. Even though you ever go to sleep watching Ancient Aliens and wake up and all of a sudden they're saying, and you're like, whoa, what, and there's like a dinosaur with an alien head on it. Like, okay, slow down.
Ancient alien theorists believe that. Yeah, that's their famous line. Yeah, they probably interviewed me for about 2 hours or so. So I knew from experience that I wasn't going to get the whole 2 hours to myself, and that they would pull out little sound bites, which they did.
Had the Area 51 J-Rod. What was the J-Rod thing, like the big premise for it? Like I watched it, but I was like, I never went down that rabbit hole completely other than on that show.
Yeah, I've always been a bit skeptical of J-Rod. That was one of their bullet points. So I'm like, all right, if you want to talk about it. And I told them that. They did not put that in the show. But basically, J-Rod allegedly is an ET that worked with the Army or the Air Force I think Dan Burish was one of the guys. Bill Uhouse is another guy. So it comes from a couple of different sources. And he allegedly helped them with reverse engineering. I think it was from the what's that crash in Arizona, the Paradise Valley crash.
Yeah,
UFO
not
crash.
Roswell, but the other.
Right, which is a legit incident, no doubt, because multiple researchers have pieced together various testimonies, including, the highly respected Ray Fowler, who interviewed a guy named, he used a pseudonym, Fritz Werner, but got an affidavit from him, and we now know who he is, Arthur Stancil, who was shipped up there in a bus with blacked out windows, and it was his job basically to measure the landing or the crash mark and determine how fast this object came in. Richard Hall, another good researcher, got a testimony from a lieutenant colonel, I think. So it's a legit case. I think there's a lot of disinformation surrounding it, as is probably true for all the UFO craft people.
Seems like that'd be like a rule of thumb almost. People just adding.
Yeah, because supposedly, some ETs survived the Roswell crash. According to other sources, no. And that's true with this one. And I think one was allegedly J-Rod. I don't know. I wasn't there. I know that I met Bill Uhouse personally.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, at a convention once, or a little MUFON meeting in LA. And I have to tell you, he was a really nice guy and very sincere and seemed honest to me. But I don't know about Dan Burish. I'm skeptical of anything coming from government sources, generally speaking, because we all know that there is disinformation and misinformation, and they're twisting the narrative. So I was like, okay, I'll talk about J-Rod, and of course that was the one that they elected to use most. Which I was really
they really went to your J-Rod dialogue a lot.
Yeah.
I was thinking that seems very specific for Preston. I mean, all the other things he knows about, why that one?
I know I'd really love to get them to talk about schoolyard UFO encounters, or maybe healings, or some of the onboard cases, because they have a tendency to do retreads of pretty well-known material.
That one from Africa, I could talk about that one for days. Just the one that crashed into Zimbabwe, or where was it? And he was working on his ship, and he's like, to save the whales, and he flew off.
The aerial Zimbabwe, aerial school in Zimbabwe.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that was a great case. That's one that really got me interested in the schoolyard encounters.
And they all said the same thing.
Yeah, well, basically, the ETs told these little, grade school age kids, who are quite young, who don't know anything really about environmentalism, especially in a place where it's already out there in the wilds.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically
primitive tribe
told one kid, you need to stop chopping down the forests, or all the air will be gone from your planet. Another, Emily Trim, she's a real good witness. They told her, you're becoming too technological. There's a good way to use technology and a bad way, and you could do better. So yeah, really interesting messages that are pretty much what the adults are getting, I will say. People who are taken on board, that's usually what they'll talk about. Dangers of nuclear proliferation and destruction of the environment.
That seems to be like their go-to topic is quit trying to kill yourself.
Yeah, what they must think of us, I can only imagine.
Yeah,
we're doing our very best to exterminate each other.
Yep. I probably said this the last time we were on here about that particular case, but in like a movie, when somebody when a gangster gets caught, a kid sees him like breaking into something, he'll toss him like a piece of candy, like stay in school, kid, and he gets away. That's what that heroes in Zimbabwe is like. The kid's like on the run. It always hit me like there's a scene on South Park kind of similar to that. And save the planet. He just crashes and tells the kids to save the whales and flies away.
South Park. Yeah, South Park's first premiere episode.
Yeah, was the
tackled the alien anal probe. Poor Kenny. I heard that there's actually ETs in over half the episodes of South Park.
Yeah, they pop in like on the side, little visitors.
Yeah, so
it's like Superman on Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of our culture now. And I think, with the schoolyard encounters, you can see why, because these are the youngest kids and they're all growing up now.
Well, did you ever think that it would get mainstream like it is right now? It's like news. I could just talk about it on the news casually, like the weather.
I suspected at some point it would, because it started to bleed into advertising very early and video games. I remember I was at a friend's house. This was years and years ago. And he said, I'm going to go to Area 51 and shoot aliens. And I looked at my friend, John. I'm like, did I just hear this little kid say what I thought he said? It's like, oh, no, Area 51's an arcade. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh,
that was back before, that's back before we had all these great video games that we have now.
I was going to say the Storm Area 51 happened in 2019.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing.
They all went out. Some weird hippie woman tried to crash the gate. Are you going to get shot?
I supported it. I'm like, let's go.
Oh, I was all about it. I woke up that morning. I'll never forget. It's September 2019, and went straight to Twitter. I mean, I didn't get out of bed. Straight to Twitter and saw video of people pulling up.
Yeah, it's the government's own fault for covering this up and lying. And I was hoping 100,000 people would show up and storm the gates.
I was ready for it.
Let's cause some chaos, because at the very least, it'll bring attention to this subject. And it did. But yeah, I personally, I've been to Area 51. I'm not going near the gate. They're serious. I talked to a lady at Contactee who was doing a show with a TV crew, and they all basically got too close, and these guys came out and they had to lay down on the ground and got the whole lecture and basically followed all the way to their hotel.
See, you can't go doing all that. Maybe go to the gate and look. Don't try to cross it.
No, it was funny because there was this tiny little guardhouse and suddenly like 20 guys came out of it. So they're coming out from underground, clearly.
I know how it is here, like at the base, like I was just talking about with the Nazis. I can't imagine some place where they have stuff like live prototypes. I can't imagine how crazy they are there. It's out in the desert when they ain't got nothing. They got a hair trigger because it happens all the time.
Yep. I've been to Area 51 like 2 or 3 times. Well, 3 times. Not to it. But
yeah. You've been to the gate.
Rachel, Nevada, and the little alien. And I have to tell you, I drove out there. I'm like, okay, I'm in Las Vegas. I've got 3/4 of a tank. I should be fine.
You have to.
I was not fine. I was almost out of gas by the time I got there.
I was not fine.
It's a long way.
Yeah.
You couldn't drive around that thing. It would take you days and days. And did some research. I found out Nevada is 88% government owned. Our government owns that state completely, pretty much.
Nothing but craters. That's all it is.
Yeah. It's a huge place.
Vegas and craters. What is the purpose of the black mailbox?
I don't know.
I've seen so many. Everybody who does we're going to Area 51 today always stops at the black mailbox, and now it's this big giant square instead of like a regular mailbox.
I think that's where people would stop to see. I mean, a lot of people. If you look into it, there's a good number of people who've seen stuff right on the borders of Area 51. Probably reverse engineering, I'm just going to say.
Oh, yeah. Just prototypes.
More than likely. But, yeah, a good portion of the UFO reports coming from Nevada, I'm going to guess, are, reverse engineered, black ops, our own guys flying around.
Yeah.
Technology that we probably got from ETs.
I think they're letting it get so popular. It tells me there's probably nothing there anymore. And Kassoon was asking the same thing. What's your opinions on Bob Lazar? And I was thinking they probably moved everything out of Area 51, and that's the reason Bob Lazar was at S4, which is 100 miles away. I don't know.
I'm guessing there's still stuff going on there because there's stuff going on everywhere. I mean, our military is neck deep in this. This is a huge subject. I'm a believer in Bob Lazar for a number of reasons. Having talked to contactees like Dolly Saffron, my book Symmetry, she's like, oh no, he's legit. He said stuff. I know he knows what he's talking about. I talked to another guy from Utah, Don Anderson. He also has fully conscious contact. And he says that when he saw the Bob Lazar drawings of the craft, he knocked him over because that was exactly what he was taken on board and saw firsthand. So little things like that. I believed it from the beginning because he was so viciously attacked.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever that happens, when all the debunkers come out of the woodwork and do everything they can to rub you out, to me, that's a red flag that if he's truly a hoaxer, who cares? Why would you care? Why would you devote so much time and energy? And yeah, I mean, they did. They erased his record and he finally got little bits and pieces like, no, I was there. And here's the proof.
Yeah, he was in that little employee handbook or in the little employee record that they found just under a filing cabinet.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's crazy how they, by them tracking them down is the reason he got fired. They could have just, explained like, hey, this is what's happening, instead of making him they caused it his MK Ultra event, basically. Like, hey, you have to go. We can't tell you why. What?
I think he was used, kind of, honestly. I suspect they knew the whole time and gave him the ability to see this stuff and talk about it. And because there's this weird aspect to, quote, disclosure. It's very tightly controlled. And it seems like there's purposeful leaks. Like David Grush, for example, his testimony came off. It's very carefully rehearsed, which, yeah, there he is.
Have visual aids.
Which, is neither here nor there. His resume is impeccable. I think he's probably who he says he is. But if he is truly under an NDA and has information that they don't want out, he wouldn't be talking. It would be a game over for him. So I feel like it's almost sanctioned. This is purely my intuition. Yeah. I'm just speculating here.
You're not the first person I've heard say that. Hey, he's getting led. They're letting him talk.
Yeah. Because I feel like it's just these guys, the folks behind the cover-up, and I'm not convinced it's senators or representatives. Some of them, for sure, or even presidents. It's the Pentagon. It's NASA. It's the cabal. It's the military-industrial complex. It's the oil industry, the banking industry, the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry. It's these folks, the 1%ers, who are behind it. The highest, the military is not elected. These are guys. We can't. Once they're in, they're untouchable. Black budget. They can do what they want with it. There's not a whole lot of oversight. I mean, we found this out when they're spending, what was it, $40 for a nail or something?
Yeah, $500 for a toilet seat, $600 for a hammer. Did you?
Yeah. So it's clear there's a lot going on that we don't even know about.
That's my favorite quote. Independence Day. He goes, how are you getting funding for this? I was like, you didn't think we're sitting $600 for a toilet seat, $500 for a hammer, did you?
Yeah, boy, it's infuriating hearing these latest reports from Arrow, All Domain Anomaly, gosh, whatever it stands for, Research, Reconnaissance Office, Research. I don't even know. It's a mouthful. And NASA, we don't have enough data. Oh, sure you don't. A satellite can read a postage stamp, and you can't tell us that you have evidence of UFOs. It's disingenuous. It's flat out lies. We know.
I've always wondered, why the James Webb telescope, that new one, I wonder why it's not able to focus in on an actual planet and see if there's things on it. Because you can see that far into the galaxies. Like, why can't you go to like a really close planet and like zoom in on it, look at it? I don't know. I'm just a smooth brain over here brainstorming.
Let's look at the moon, for example.
Yeah.
Point that thing at the moon and see all these, because from everything that I've read, and I talked to a few insiders. One guy was a petty photographer, and I believe him, who was on one of the ships that basically picked up the astronauts, and he got to photograph them, talk to them directly. He said they were losing their minds because they did see stuff up there that they can't talk about because their families will be killed, basically. This cover-up is no joke, but he said for sure there's stuff up there, and so they took so many photographs, probably millions, and he developed about 0.0001% of them and saw all kinds of stuff. He said basically what he saw was defunct alien bases, extraterrestrial structures of some kind that weren't active, but were clearly structures of some kind. And hard to see because they're made out of the same material as, the moon rocks up there.
Yeah, it seems like they blend in too. Like they're made to be camo.
Yeah.
The ones you see with the little tubes and the 90-degree angles.
I'm not sure who Jason Sands is.
Yeah, I was hoping you would, because I don't know who that is.
I know Johnny Sands was a singer who had an encounter right outside of Las Vegas, but I'm not sure.
Looking it up.
Who
6 days ago. Whoa. He's a whistleblower.
All right. I'm not keeping up on these whistleblowers, apparently.
Yeah, they're coming in hot. Okay.
It's about time. I know that there's a lot of them out there. It's not just Grush and Lazar, and I've talked to a few myself. And they're all waiting in the sidelines, just hoping to get released from these NDAs.
What are the whistleblowers trying to accomplish by blowing said whistle? Like, what's their end game to reveal? That's kind of a dumb question. Well, it seems like they're trying to reveal something, but they just can't determine what they want to say. I'm like, just say it. Say something. Give me some pictures.
I think that, the good ones, the ones who are absolutely legitimately trying to reveal the truth, is, I think, they're just trying to do their part for disclosure. Do the right thing, end the cover up. But I think there's a good number of them out there who are towing the party line and were basically ordered or sanctioned in some way to control the narrative. Because we're at a point right now, this is an open conspiracy. The cover up is crumbling. I mean, we all know UFOs are real. We don't need the government to tell us that. The evidence is there, and it's mountainous. Skeptics do not have a leg to stand on. And I'll just be rude about it. You haven't done your homework if you don't believe in this stuff, because it's there. There is enough evidence to conclusively prove this in any court of law. So it's just ridiculous to say that this doesn't exist. It does. You can argue, of course, about where they come from or who they are and what exactly their agenda is, but there's no doubt that this is a real, and I hate that word, phenomena, but it's real. There's no doubt about that.
Like, so the question now is interdimensional or extraterrestrial?
Yeah, I'm going with extraterrestrial because I think we're all interdimensional, every entity, and it doesn't preclude being extraterrestrial. If you can time travel or travel interdimensionally, you can still be extraterrestrial.
Yeah, seems like you have to almost be interdimensional if you are extraterrestrial and get here, because you can't just
exactly.
You have to do some kind of wormholing.
I mean, if we have these craft and we have the bodies, if we could ever get our hands on that, all bets would be off. We wouldn't be having these discussions, because there's the craft, and, there's that power source. It's solid, it's metal, or whatever it's made of.
That's kind of what tells me about that. Yeah, it's David. David's a cool cat. He was just asking if you've ever been abducted.
I'm not going to use that word. I was voluntarily taken on board, and I loved it. Yeah, I did have a missing time incident as a young man. I guess I wasn't that young. Let me see, 27. That's pretty young to me now. Now I'm in my 50s, sliding down towards my 60s pretty soon.
You're aging pretty well.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, David, I'll send you the video of Preston told a story the first time he was on, but yeah, it's pretty neat. Missing time. I remember you in your car, I think it was.
That's right. Yep. And I'm starting to have some dream recall, I guess I'll call it, of being on board.
Coming back slowly and surely.
There was one, I'm sure this is a real incident, even though, I can't say I recalled it fully consciously. But I remember going into this craft, and people always describe me, well, it had rounded walls. And when I hear that, I always picture people like standing inside of an egg, right? But it wasn't like that. The walls were basically straight and flat, but they curved into the floor, and it curved into the ceiling. And it was like the dull side of aluminum foil, a really interesting kind of dull, shiny texture on the walls that looked steel, silvery. And there was a table in the center, and there was this 8-foot tall guy who was too skinny to be 8 feet tall, but he was wearing a white kind of jumpsuit, skin tight, and radiating wisdom, and just a cool guy. I mean, I really was like, wow, look at this guy. And I looked up at his face, right? He had real white skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at his face and I couldn't see his darn face. It would blur up each time I looked at him. And I had memories of seeing him before too. And he said, would you like to see the ship? Basically. And I said, yeah. And it took me to another room, and he pointed to the corner of this other room, which was, through an arched doorway. And the wall and floor turned partly transparent in this one section, mm-hmm. which was so cool. Because, I've interviewed a lot of people and I read about this stuff, but to mm-hmm. see it yourself, you're like, okay, well, this is what people are talking about. Because a lot of people describe, portholes and stuff like this, but most don't describe any window frame. They just turn the wall transparent.
Yeah, translucent
section of it. Yeah, exactly. And that's what he did. A lot. Yeah. And I looked through it and I'm like, whoa, because we were underwater. We were absolutely underwater. I couldn't see a whole lot because just that it was water. That was the coolest thing. And then mm-hmm. he took me to see, I'm presuming it's the engine or something like it, mm-hmm. but it reminded me kind of your old style furnace with slats on it. Mm-hmm. It was this weird device, which doesn't really have a parallel here, so it's hard to describe.
Hey, David said he saw the same thing Balak did. Oh, crazy.
Telling you, this was not the only memory I have, too. I remember asking, like, well, how will I recognize you if I see you again? And he gave this weird answer. He's like, well, you'll have to look up at me. I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. You're being 8 feet tall. 7. Yep. No,
I'll be the 10-foot tall guy. It's really scary. You can't miss me.
Let me think for a second. Was he 8 feet? Yeah, I would say he's closer to 8 than 7. It's somewhere in between there. I don't know, because I'm 5'9"3/4.
Yeah, about the same height.
So, and my nephew was 6 feet too. I've met a few 7 feet tall people, and they're not that tall. That guy was over 7 feet.
Do you remember the end of Close Encounters when they showed the actual aliens walking out, and one was like you just described, like 10 feet tall and just lanky? So it kind of reminds me of. I think that movie tried to reveal some stuff to us.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Alan Hynek was one of the consultants.
And in it, he was in the movie.
That's right.
I did not know that until about a year ago. I was like, what? That was him? I thought it was like somebody trying to be him with the pipe and everything.
Yeah, well, there's, the scene with Richard Dreyfuss where mm-hmm. Everything's floating in his car and mm-hmm. the signpost is going ding, 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 back and mm-hmm. forth and actually physically shaking.
Yep.
That's an honest to God case. And when he leans his head out and gets half sunburned, well, that's exactly what James Stokes, a rocket scientist, described when he was at White Sands and this UFO came over, stalled a whole row of cars. Half of his face was sunburned. So I think there's little details in there that are drawn directly from actual cases.
That movie, The Explorer.
Another good one. The way the craft morphs.
Yep.
Very much like that. People describe how the tables and shelves will come right out and go right back in. And there's no seams to any doors. So
absolutely love Close Encounters. Like I got like Richard Hoffman that I talked about earlier, one of your Ancient Aliens alum. He lives here nearby, and he was talking about getting the Blu-ray. It had all the maps and stuff in it and everything. I was like, what? That exists? I was in Best Buy paying like an hour and a half getting the same thing.
Yeah, that's a movie they'll never remake. They better now.
Nope.
They're remaking Soylent Green, I heard, just today.
It's going to be vegan this time. Soylent Green is vegan. It's worse than people. I'd rather eat people than vegan food.
I don't know why they haven't done a sequel to Close Encounters, because basically it ended with just, this wasn't even real. They saw ETs, but let's go on board. Let's see what happened to those Richard Dreyfuss. Let's follow him.
His wife left him. He lost his family.
Yep.
And we were talking about CE5s earlier, Kassoon, with about Les over in Georgia. I don't know what Preston thinks about Dr. Greer.
Oh, I've got my thoughts. Yeah,
never-
I've met him a number of times,
Mhm.
and I think he's absolutely a legit contactee because I have seen UFOs in his presence at least 2 or 3 times. He came to LA to basically form the LA group of CSETI, which is all about CE5s and calling down UFOs. And he used my cases, by the way, in his book. He's like, "You want to call down a UFO? Here's a case from Preston Dennett." Like, oh, whoa, that was real cool. And he actually, he thanked me personally. He's like, "Oh yeah, you actually gave me a little kick in the butt to get this going." I'm like, "Oh, cool." I mean, he's a really nice guy to me. He's always very nice. And we went out that first night. He did a lecture with like 100 people, but about maybe 30 or 40 of us went out into this right outside of LA, just semi-rural area, the Santa Susana Pass, right outside of San Fernando Valley. And darned if we didn't get there, and immediately this light, someone shouts out, "What's that? Look up!" And of course we all look up, and there's this light up there that wasn't a satellite. I mean, it was big. It's about the size of almost a half moon, really, a quarter moon, and this weird blob of light. It's just kind of arcing across the zenith there, just a couple of degrees, not long, but clearly wasn't a balloon or a plane, a helicopter or anything that I could think of. That was the first time, and then we saw stuff the second night, weird strobe-like flashes of light, and we formed our little core group, and basically we go out once or twice every 3 or 4 months, staying up late to like 3, 4 a.m. I'm working full time. This is not easy for me to do.
I was going to say, good Lord. How good is the book industry doing?
Oh, well, I get minimum wage. Well, less than minimum wage, but it helps.
Yeah, it has to. Whenever you went out with them, had you already started your the process of communication when they saw them, or they just like get out of the car and they knew you?
No, the first time we had just literally gotten there. But often when we would go out there, after that, we would see anomalous lights every now and then after doing our meditation, or usually, honestly, it would be, okay, nothing happened, let's pack up and get going, and then something would show up. They have a sense of humor about this. That happened a good number of times. I had a couple of really good ones, actually. I mean, it works. We again went to that same exact spot, Santa Susana Pass, packed up, we're walking down this trail back to our cars. There was maybe 7 or 9 of us. And I saw this bright light on the mountaintop, just on the other side of the way there, a mile or 2. And I knew that area. It's Rocky Peak. There's a fire break leading up to it, but there's nothing up there. And it's closed at night. So yeah, someone could be up there, but they're not likely to.
Not with a giant light.
No. And I'm like, "Guys, stop. I saw a light." And you're like, "Oh, you're kidding." I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. Why would I kid? And it flashed again, and we started flashing back and forth with this thing, twice, and it would flash twice. And we did that for a good 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm thinking, well, it's on the ground. How am I supposed to believe this is a UFO if it's on the ground? Yeah, it's up on the top of a mountain where actually some of the guys went up to that exact spot. I already knew that this was a very difficult area to get to, and they confirmed it. But I'm just sitting there thinking, not good enough. I don't like ambiguity. I've seen enough anomalous lights. Like, sorry, show me the craft. I want the portholes. Come on, land already. Let's go on board. So I was a little bit
open the door,
right? But then I'm thinking, okay, this is not good enough. And then, boom. I mean, maybe they were listening. I don't know. They shine this blood red, prismatic, huge red light. That, I mean, you couldn't fake it if you had a light filter, with a red on it, because it was vivid red. I mean, you don't see stuff like that from taillights or something. And it was enough to go, ooh, oh my God. And that's when I'm like, okay, I think this is a legit sighting.
Did it ever shoot up afterwards?
No, didn't get that. Though I was in Topanga Canyon once, my first time leading the meditation. I don't like to lead I don't want attention. I just want to sit there and, not be noticed. But they're like, it's your turn. I'm like, fine. So I organized the whole thing. I brought the hot chocolate and the blankets and so forth. I'm like, let's go all in and do this. And went up there with, I think there was 5 of us. This was a nationwide one. We're all doing it on the same night. So that was kind of cool. And doing the meditation, which is, basically just visualizing where you're at and trying to call out like, we're here, this sort of thing, and shining your flashlights before and after. And we're all, my eyes are closed. I'd finished leading this meditation, and we were all completely quiet. And I just kept getting this, look up, look up, look up, look up. And I'm like, I'm not looking up, I'm meditating. Like, no, look up, look up. Not a voice, of course, but just a feeling. Like, you should look up now. Look up right now. Look up, look up. Finally, I'm like, fine. And I looked up, and I'll tell you that exact second that I looked up, this pinprick of light appeared and blew up into this giant white circle. And I hate to say it because people are not going to believe it, but it covered a good half of the sky. It was like someone pouring milk on top of a glass table, and you're lying under it.
Oh, really?
Spread out in this ever-expanding circle and winked out. Not more than 1 to 3 seconds. I suppose it could have been 5, but I doubt it. Fast. Because I didn't have a chance to say, oh my God, look. I'm just kind of dumbfounded and staring up, and it was gone. And I look down, of course, at everyone, and their eyes are closed. I'm like,
they still got their eyes closed.
They're going to be mad at me. They're not going to believe me. This sucks. But, I'm like, guys, I just saw something. And they're like, you're kidding. I'm like, well, I'm not going to lie about it. This is what I saw. And I did get confirmation because I know that area super well. And I've got flyers up. And this was during a wave of sightings, 92 to 94. This was 94, tail end of it. And this couple, let me see, Raina Massey and Bruce Merrifield were driving along, boyfriend and girlfriend. They broke up. And they saw this craft, same exact time, about a mile away. And they described this full-on metallic craft, which turned up on its side and flashed, they said, about 50 lights on its bottom and all these different colors. Clearly, they were about 100 yards away from it, not even. The top of this little hill, which was right over the hill where I was. Gosh darn, I was so damn close to seeing this.
Isn't theirs a popular sighting, the one you just talked about? That's one.
No, this as far as I know, they were the only 2 who saw it, and perhaps me, either it going in or out.
Yeah, but I've heard those names before in a sighting with it coming and showing its underbelly and doing like a.
Oh, that yeah, they will do that. They'll turn on their side they basically have to. This is one of the. I shouldn't give this away, but too late. A craft will turn on its side. Mostly when it darts off. So
that's what it did in the gimbal footage.
Yeah, because they're basically harnessing our magnetic field lines. So yeah, I believe Dr. Greer is legit. I had a big discussion with him, and we ended up having a little bit of a disagreement on whether or not people are being taken on board in large numbers. And he didn't think so. He thought it was all my labs, military abductions. And I think, I'm leaning towards it being more common than I originally thought. But no, I'm like, dude, you were taken on board. You claim it. Pretty much everyone in the C-SETI group has had experiences. It's not just you. A lot of people are having this experience. It's far more common than people realize. Nobody's talking about it. It's a rare person who has an onboard experience who goes public. People will report a UFO sighting, but even then, it's 1 in 10. But if you see an ET or you're taken on board, it's 1 in 100 will report it. I've asked all the people I interviewed, and they don't call the police. They don't call the Air Force. They don't know about MUFON or New Fork or any of these UFO reporting groups.
Yeah.
So yeah, I disagree with him on that. I think it's a lot more common. And I have some other. I'm not entirely happy with some of the things he's putting out recently. And I don't like the fact that he charges a bundle of money. That's up to him, but I can't afford that.
For his sessions.
Right. I don't think you need to pay that much to go out and see a UFO. Anyone can do it.
Yeah. I did it in my backyard. This is crazy.
But he's done great work, I have to say, with disclosure and getting some whistleblowers and getting a light shined on them. I think he's done some really important work and really needs kudos for that, because him and that other guy who's really working hard at it. Gosh, what is his name? Oh, I forget, but Steve Bassett. That's right.
Yeah. I thought you meant the guy that's always with Art Bell. Not Art Bell, but God, George Norrie. What's his name? He's on Ancient Aliens all the time. I think it was Jeremy something.
Corbell?
Yeah, Jeremy Corbell. I thought you were talking about him.
No, he's a relative newcomer, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I'd have to verify that, but I don't remember seeing him back in the 80s and 90s.
He's like Bob Lazar's handler whenever he does things now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Because he was the one with the thing, like Bob Lazar texted him, telling him he's getting raided by the FBI.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That was...
I wish, I hope all these whistleblowers continue to come out, because some I've talked to were literally on their deathbed or very old. And so, do you know what? It's time. I'm going to talk about what I know. One of my favorite guys I talked to, who I'll call a whistleblower because he flat out is, Mel Hansen, he actually contacted a number of researchers and was given the brush off, basically. And he's like, "Well, listen, I was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in March of 1967. And when he said that, I'm like, oh my God, Malmstrom. That's a huge case and really well known. And he was part of a crew that basically maintained these missile sites, which are all independent, separate sites. And Malmstrom, of course, is a very well-known incident where UFOs came down and shut down our ICBMs, nuclear.
Yeah. They had that little picture of them come down and do that and bounced away.
Yeah, it's an amazing case with multiple witnesses, multiple UFOs, very well verified, thanks to Robert Salas, who's the first whistleblower who came out. But the guy I talked to heard it on Unsolved Mysteries, I think, back when it was a popular show. And he's like, gosh, they're talking about it. I guess I can talk. And yeah, got the brush off, which makes me wonder who he talked to. But, finally found me. I'm like, dude, I'll absolutely talk to you. And his story is so interesting because he's there with his crew. They're all going below ground to do the maintenance. And he's in the security Jeep with the other security, the MP guy, when a UFO shows up. And he says it was a super quiet night, eerily quiet. I'm like, okay, here we go. And he says the stars started to disappear. He's like, God, looking at that and realized there's a big black object right over the missile site.
Oh, wow.
He says it couldn't tell how high up it was, but it couldn't have been that high because it was basically covering a pretty wide area, blocking out a good portion of the stars right above the site. But he's like, could have been 100 feet, it could have been 1,000, I don't know, which is a good detail because if you don't know how big it is, you don't know how high it is, unless you're really proficient at measuring light scattering and various things like that. But this is a dark night. So he said the right thing in terms of being a trained observer. And he said, as soon as this thing comes over the missile site, it goes offline. And this cannot happen. I mean, these things have fail safes, and it did. As soon as it went offline, it went right back online with, let me see if I can get this right. It was the diesel generator.
Which auxiliary power.
Yeah, exactly. Because these things can't just go offline. It would be too dangerous. And that went offline. And there was a second fail-safe, battery power. And so it went back on and it went right off. And of course, at this point, the security guy is calling the base central, which is about an hour away, because these missile sites are out in the wilderness, each isolated, each an independent system. And it was just going off that night, one missile site after another. Kind of domino effect, which is, again, independent systems can't do this unless something is affecting them. And the security showed up after, it went away pretty quick.
Yeah.
Certainly by the time the security showed up, and they said, leave your tools. You're going back to the base. You'll pick up your tools tomorrow. and took him back to the base, and they stayed up all night getting the riot act. What did you see? You didn't see it. Don't talk about it. You are never to talk about it to any of your crew, not your wife, nobody, or they'll be hell to pay. You'll get fined. Worse. They didn't threaten his life or anything, but they did threaten his pension, which is a big enough deal.
That's basically life.
Yeah. He ended up talking, though. He said he would talk to as he grew older and all his friends started dying. He's like, he would talk to his best buddy there, who was one of his coworkers, but only when they were camping out in the wilderness and no one could pry and listen.
And nobody's wearing a wire. You gotta be careful there.
But once his friend died and he realized, I have only got a few years left here, like, I'm going to do my part for disclosure. And found me.
Yeah.
Having another sighting, tried to publicize it, get the police, the Air Force interested. No one was interested.
Was there ever any indication that was like a foreign adversary trying that, testing out something?
No. I mean, certainly no one's taken responsibility for it, Russian, German, or Chinese, or what have you.
That's why I think that those little, the Tic Tac things everybody sees isn't foreign. It's like something else.
I don't know. Some of the stuff I think is probably us, and they're not even informing the Navy colonel who's in charge of the ship, or maybe they are.
It's like reverse engineered things.
Yeah. We know that these intelligence agencies are completely compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. Not only does the right hand not know what the left hand is doing, each finger doesn't know what the other finger is doing. I mean, it's crazy.
I'll tell you, when it comes to things like that, it makes me wonder what it would take to get us to use them in real. Like, what would have to happen in real life for those things to come out and be like, oh, we're just squashing everything. We got this faster than light, gravity defying, turn on a dime technology. What would that take to reveal that to the world?
Well, that's what the guy I interviewed said about the astronauts. They were pissed off. They're like, what the heck? We're going up on these, basic tin cans with a bomb going off on one end. And we've got technology that could have taken us there much more easily. It was a whitewash. It was just. Yeah, and they're not using it, of course, publicly, I think, because it's will give away your hand. And of course, if the oil industry wants us to spend money on oil, and the pharmaceutical industry, let's face it, medicine is a business.
Yep.
And you look into the on-board cases, people are taken on board and they're physically examined. This is the most common thing. What's going on here? Why is that always happening? People are like, oh, they're experimenting, they're analyzing. No, it's all about healing. And I can demonstrate this with firsthand cases, one after another. Most every major researcher out there who focuses on onboard cases can verify this. Healing happens a lot. And this is what is happening when people are being physically examined. They're checking you out and healing you in a number of cases, a lot of cases, actually. So my point is, we have from the crash retrievals, which there are a lot of them. It's not just Roswell and the Paradise Valley crash and Aztec and all the well-known ones. If you look into the research of Bob and Ryan Wood and Leonard Stringfield and the guy who specializes on this, it's well over 100.
Who was the famous abductee with the prostate cancer that got healed? Was that the Pascagoula? No,
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a case with that. I don't know.
It may have been fiction. Maybe something I saw on TV. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
I know Chris Bledsoe was cured of Crohn's disease.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah, he had Crohn's disease, which is something you can't just fake a healing on. He was basically wheelchair bound largely and taken volumes of medicine and had an experience and literally was cured just like that. That's excellent evidence. This is why skeptics need to do their homework, do your research.
That's what it was, because that new show, The Files Unexplained, on Netflix. Like the first episode was Calvin Parker, and then like the next to last one, like their coup de grace was Chris Bledsoe. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the point I wanted to make, because we have these crash retrievals, right? And we're trying to get the technology off these craft. And from some of the whistleblowers I've read about, they're pulling some of these instruments off and a bloop goes right back into the craft. They cannot get it out of the craft. Some of it they can. And from what I've read, they've got some healing technology that is off the charts, almost magic. It's technology, clearly, but there's this jewel-like instrument that you can slide over a person's body, and it basically creates a hologram of will slide right to any tumor that's in a person's body. Anti-aging type stuff, little light rays that can open and close wounds, stuff like this. So can you imagine if that got out and was able to be used in the public arena? Pharmaceutical industry is making billions in profits.
Yeah.
And more people are dying from legal drugs now than illegal ones.
Yep. The opioids are worse than anything they got out there on the street.
Yeah. And
as a
so
whole.
they have no motive to release this technology. Not because, it's all about greed, power, control. And this is the only reason we have whistleblowers who are sanctioned, is because if they don't start disclosing and controlling the narrative, they are going to become not credible, irrelevant. They're already at that point. Let's face it. We don't need our, quote, secret governments to tell us this is real. I think it would be a mistake to rely on them. I would love it, if we had a sitting president who just said, okay, screw it, I'm talking. This is real. Just say it. We all know it.
I think Bill Clinton tried it, didn't he? And he couldn't. He had to. They shoot him back into his hole.
I know Carter said when he was running, he's like, I'm going to release all of it. I've seen one. God bless him for coming forward and still making it into office.
And Reagan got mad about swamp gas.
Yeah.
Stop calling it swamp gas.
Yeah, all of them have some interesting stories to tell. Obama made definite, strong, veiled references and confirmed Area 51. And Trump
he did. He was the one where it came out. That's right.
Yeah. They've all talked about it in one way or another to some degree. So it's clear that they know something. I don't think most of them are in the loop. Probably George Bush Sr. was. He was the head of the CIA.
Yeah. He helped kill Kennedy, didn't he?
Oof.
He was on the ground. He was there.
Kennedy was probably going to disclose, if you're looking at that research, Marilyn Monroe connection and all that's going on. He was done. He's like, I'm going to, you guys are done. So what a shame that didn't, things could have been so different. The Roswell press release, remember that one the day after the crash? Like, oh, we finally got one. It's a flying saucer. They're real.
Then they changed it the next day, dude.
It's a balloon. Yeah, like the head senior intelligence officer is going to mistake a balloon. Like any rancher out there who's seen these balloons coming down for, ever since they've owned the ranch. These balloons come down there and they bring them in. Mac Brazel knew that this was not a balloon. It's ridiculous.
It's just the oh my God, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, it's like somebody's leftover baked potato. It's like the next day. Oh, never mind, just a balloon. Because someone talking about Werner von Braun. I think Werner von Braun warned about Blue Beam, didn't he? The fake alien invasion.
Yeah. Well, this is according to Carol Rosen, who worked with him, I believe. And he basically told her all these predictions, which are coming true, and said that, the final one would be the ET threat, which I'm worried about. There's a lot of buzz in the community about this. I think we're seeing setup of it in some of these cases, like the South American face peelers. Remember that came out last year?
Mm-hmm.
A little
Last Contact?
Peru, I think it was.
Initial Contact?
I think that's a MyLab.
This guy here?
Oh, well, no, I'm not talking about that necessarily. That's another whole weird going on.
What was the one, that documentary that came out last year that was The Point of Contact? You said it was in my lab. It was in Peru.
I think you're talking about Moment of Contact.
Moment of Contact, that's right.
With the Virginia incident.
Yeah. Which
is certainly an interesting case. I have some questions about that one too. But I don't know. I'm very concerned that there's our government now has the capacity to do a very convincing UFO sighting using
Oh yeah.
nothing but holograms and holographics and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9G, however high up it goes at this point, because we see 5G, but we know it goes higher than that.
And they got 50 years on us, whatever we think they have.
And look at some of those, billboards in Japan or whatever, where the cars come out in hands and whales coming out of the gymnasium floor and things, dragons flying through the sky that look real. I mean, they look 100% three-dimensional. And you've seen those drone shows that people are putting on. If you put one of those up in the sky and in the shape of a UFO, or any TR-3B or any of these craft that we have, they could just put a whole bunch of holograms, put one real one in there, and start lasering people's homes and villages and cities, a la Independence Day,
or Maui,
right?
A la Maui. That's a big one. Blue roofs weren't affected.
Yeah, I remember when Canada was on fire. I know some people who live up there were like, that's not natural what's going on here.
That was random. Happened out of nowhere.
Yeah, California practically burned down at one point as well. And remember, same thing, Australia.
I forgot about the Australian ones. That was bad. Yeah,
this helps push the, quote, global warming agenda too, which I don't think it's really about that at all. I think, because talking to Dolly Safran and what she's been told by the ETs, and which is verifying what I've been told by other contactees, we're facing some really interesting, use that word, interesting events in our future in terms of the sun going micronova and massive CMEs that will knock off the entire electrical grid, which makes the Carrington event of 1859 look like child's play. And that was so intense that it was lighting up electronic devices. There's a video out there somewhere on that, which is highly recommended because it shows how really intense that CME was. Now we're looking at one that's going to be much larger. So we'll see. We'll see if this all goes down, but I think it's interesting that so many contactees have gotten the message to move out into the mountains, save food, move off grid, have enough water. So I think that is another sign pointing towards the validity of these warnings that ETs are giving so many people. I just put that out in, here's my latest book, shameless plug if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Not From Here, Volume 5, which covers a bunch of different types of encounters, but one, I think the most important and longest chapter is You Were Warned.
Yep.
Which is basically, because people have been asking me, do a show on this, write a book on this. And I've tried, but the volume of information it would be a 1,000-page book. So I'm like, you know what, let's collect together what I can and get this information out there. Time is of the essence. And it's
if you want to, if you want to see a list of your books, it's in the description in the website of this episode, no matter how you're listening to the show.
Oh, cool. Thanks. I appreciate that. But yeah, the ETs, this is, if you're taken on board and you can listen beyond, don't be afraid. We're not here to hurt you. You're fine. Because a lot of people at this point, we're so drenched in fear in our society.
I bet. And you were saying last time that you think the negative aspect ones, the negative abducting experiences are MILABs.
I think a lot of them are. It's a very tricky and controversial aspect because people are like, well, listen, I feel like I was taken against my will. I didn't ask for this. And it was terrifying. And that can be interpreted. And perhaps, I'm not going to say it's my job to say, no, that wasn't bad for you. If it scared the living daylights out of you and now you have PTSD and nightmares and you hate it, that's a negative experience. But I've talked to people who've had the same exact experience. I'm like, I wasn't scared. I was fine. They didn't hurt me. And I don't really have cases of people who are intentionally given pain. There are people who get a physical exam and they're like, gosh, these guys are hurting me. This hurts.
Yeah.
Usually, not I do have one guy who said, no, they didn't use any anesthesia on me. They stuck this needle. That was one out of many, many cases. Most people say, oh, they put their hand on here and they stopped the pain, or they put me unconscious, or no, there was no pain. I don't have cases where they're intentionally torturing people or doing downright sadistic behavior. It's just not there. So
with the Travis Walton poke him in the eye thing,
that was not real.
yeah, I didn't realize I didn't realize that he was a hoaxer until like recently.
No, I think he's a legit guy. Honestly, I think the case is.
You mean like the movie? I mean,
the movie.
There was like a theory that he was a hoaxer, or there was like I didn't realize that was a thing till recently.
Yeah, there's a guy who's pushing like the hoax aspect and says, "Listen, he was right next to a smoke. What do you call it? A monitoring station, fire, where they monitor fires, and it's a round little thing, and it looks, if you were to glance at it at night and see this thing lit up, like, I could see someone saying, "Oh, it's a UFO," but no, there were 6 guys there." They all saw this. Every single one of them has stuck to their story.
They all passed a lie detector test
multiple times.
Yeah.
There's physical evidence. I met Travis. I think he's absolutely legit. Whenever anyone has a really good case, that's when the debunkers come out.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at the material this guy has collected to say, I think this is a hoax. And I didn't find it at all compelling. Yeah, Travis did have an interest in UFOs, but who doesn't these days, especially? But back then, it was a popular subject. Throughout the 50s, everyone was talking about UFOs. So I don't think that
70s?
The Walton case, 73.
78, 73.
I think it was 73. That was a big, big year. It's the year of the humanoids. I think it was 70. Could have been 72. It was around that point. 70.
Yeah, it was in the
maybe it was 75. I don't know. It's around there. But I think his case is legit because there's not a whole lot of people who can say, 5 people saw the UFO that took me on board.
Yeah, I mean, they had multiple witnesses, which is why whenever I saw that it might have been that it was accused of being a hoax, I'm like, how? Like a whole truckload of people watched it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the guys who was, as they fled the scene, which I can understand because this is traumatic, one of them saw the thing dart away. And they were all accused of murder. You murdered this guy. The movie Fire in the Sky was a great movie, but I don't know why they fictionalized the onboard segment. It was I do know why, because the Hollywood folks said, no, this is too much like other cases, and
it's nothing close to what he actually talks about.
Nothing close to it.
Scary.
Rumors of a remake, which I hope they do, because it would be nice if someone put together a movie that's actually accurate. And I'm yet to see one. Communion was a okay movie, but it didn't quite go as far as I hoped it would. The Betty and Barney Hill, what it called, the UFO Incident, was a movie which was somewhat fear-based, but actually did a really good job. I thought it's still one of my favorite movies on this subject in terms of representing a true life incident. But I heard that they're going to remake that one. So
yeah, I'd like to watch it. Now, that documentary on Travis was good. It actually told it better.
Yeah, I love that.
It's kind of like what really happened or whatever, Travis.
So anyone who's skeptical, I'd like to sit down with them and watch that movie and say, let's go over this. Let's go at what each of these people are saying. Because no, I don't think they saw a fire tower. They all described this craft as absolutely stunningly beautiful and a marvel of technology. And all the things Travis describes, I've heard from other people. Everything from walking into the center and seeing a chair and the walls go transparent, to these human-looking ETs, to the descriptions of the interior, the little gray guys he saw.
Wasn't his thing was he got burned by the radiation, so they had to take him up to cure him?
Yep. Yeah. He initially thought, this was bad. It was very scary. I didn't like it at all. I don't think these guys are our friends. And he's like, I think actually they were saving my life.
This is a predator
killed him. Yeah. He ran under. Don't run under a UFO because
Don't do
they
it.
are very hot for one thing. And if you look into the cases of so-called injuries, most of them are people who come up to a UFO and get burned in some way or another, or perhaps my labs. There's a few where one guy did shoot at a ET and they shot right back and basically fried him with a ray. João Prestes, a case from Brazil. So if they will defend themselves, and who wouldn't?
Yeah. I mean, getting shot at by a monkey, you gotta shoot back.
Right. So,
Before I let you go, I wanted to. John was asking about your recent Bigfoot investigations or interest.
yeah, I've been looking into Bigfoot for a while because I got my first Bigfoot UFO case where they come together.
Mm-hmm.
That was back, I was early 1990s. And I got another one after that. I had avoided looking into Bigfoot because I had a sneaky suspicion it was real. And it would be opening up a can of worms. And of course it was.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, as the years passed, I began investigating all these aspects, whether it's ghosts or out-of-body experiences or levitation or psychic healing and near-death experiences, because they're all connected to a degree. So yeah, Bigfoot has become part of my research. I've interviewed a number of people. There's no doubt in my mind it's real. It's like the UFO situation. Really good evidence is covered up because there are accounts of Bigfoot captures and killings, and you can try to trace the body, and Smithsonian's institution is often implicated.
Mm-hmm.
But I think these guys are intelligent, sentient, and I think they have some really strong psychic abilities too, because there's a lot of talk about them disappearing in a flash of light or
disappearing just out of the blue.
Right, this sort of thing. I've got some first-hand cases of that. I'm not sure all of them are the same exact type. I'm sure they're not, because if you look at it culturally speaking, the Australians have little yowies, and all cultures have all manner of, quote, supernatural creatures, whether it's elves or kobolds or dwarves or goblins or what have you. Yeah. And
Chupacabra.
a lot of these people are like, well, they're not. Jacques Vallée, pretty well known in this field, says, well, people were seeing fairies in Ireland. This phenomenon is clearly masquerading as different things. I'm like, hold on a second, Jacques. What makes you think that fairies aren't real and aren't exactly what they appear to be? Not everything is ET. Some of these are probably cryptoterrestrials or interdimensional beings. I'll absolutely agree with that, but I don't think that ETs are masquerading around as fairies in the 1800s and 1700s. I think that the ET theory, and I hate to call it that, the ET explanation is the valid one because it fits the evidence far better than any of these other, quote, interdimensional intelligence that manifests in different ways. Okay, well, how does it manifest? Where's the mechanism? What happens to it if nobody's looking? Are you telling me that this is completely anthropocentric? Sorry, I get all fired up on this because it drives me.
It's all right.
When I hear this, if any single one of these crash retrieval reports is true, then all bets are off. We know what it is. Our government sure knows. For Pete's sake, people are being taken on board. Where are they when they're not in their room? And how are they getting healed? And what are these implants? We're taking them out of people's bodies. That's not an interdimensional intelligence. The missing fetus syndrome. What happened to the baby? I can tell you what happened to them. They're growing up because I've interviewed a number of contactees who later go on board, and there's their child. There's their missing twin. They were twins when one of the twins is gone, and they meet their twin later on in life.
Wasn't it Bledsoe that said, meet your little brother?
Oh, really? I'm not aware of that. I just got his book, UFOs of God. Yeah. He's got his book is different from a lot of stuff I've read.
What keeps me up at night is somebody in the government knows this stuff is real, and like they go to work every day and deal with it. Like, how do you do that? You got to just be ice water in your veins.
Yeah. Where are your morals, for one thing? You're really going to lie about this to your grave. It's infuriating. That's why I love all these whistleblowers coming out. Judith Crane, or this one lady who worked at Wright Patterson. It was her job to catalog all the little pieces coming out of UFOs, and she spilled the beans. Thank God. I'm glad she did. I think that was Judith Crane, one of hundreds of whistleblowers.
I hope I never get privy to that kind of information, because I don't want it, honestly, if I'm under some kind of contract or NDA.
Yeah, Earl Grey, he's a well-known MUFON researcher. He's on the circuit. His mom was involved with doing stuff that she couldn't talk about. She did tell him little bits when he was a little kid, and he started talking about it. She looks at him like, "Do you remember that? Shut up! You were a little kid. You're not supposed to remember what I told you."
So now I got to wipe your memory. Hold still.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people have stuff that they're going to go to their grave with.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, It's a shame.
Wow.
I feel like one day it's all going to come out. It's just going to bust wide open. I don't know if our government will ever do it voluntarily, but
we're going to get that White House lawn incident. I can feel it.
I'm waiting.
Covered it. Well, Preston, it's been a good time. I'm glad you come back, and we'll wrap it up now. But because I know you and me, and I noticed for a while that we could go for 7 hours, and I don't have enough coffee for that long. But yeah, and next time Dolly will be on again soon. Those of us who are Dolly fans, not Dolly Parton, but Dolly Safford. And we may see Preston in the sidelines there as well. So I don't think this is the last he'll be on here. And you have anything coming up other than your books, which is your links to your websites in the description? You got any projects or shows or anything you can't tell us?
Yeah, well, I have the Light Gate, which I co-host with Dolly Safford each Monday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific. Scheduled to speak at the name of the conference is Shag Harbor Conference, coming up in, I think it's September, and going to put out Symmetry 2, because we only touched the surface of that. Another book on out-of-body experiences. I'm busy. I've always got irons in the fire.
Is that going to be another Dolly book?
Yep. I haven't got the title yet, but it's going to continue the true life adventures of Dolly Safford and her work with the ETs. So
you got like the untapped well of resources right there next to you. Here, just write this down. Just put a tape recorder next to her at night and just release that daily.
I'm telling you, I've got a notebook right here where I quickly write down little notes for. So when she mentions something, I'm like, "That's going in Symmetry 2."
Wait, you said what?
Exactly.
All right, everyone. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks, Preston, for being on. We'll see you next time, and thanks for watching, folks. Be sure to share if you haven't, and subscribe if you haven't as well. See ya, Preston.
All right.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it, didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.